After an extended weekend following the Thursday night loss to the Atlanta Falcons, the Saints are back in the Dome to start their final two-game homestand of the season. Atlanta's in town next week in a monster rematch. Today, it's the New York Jets, losers of 3 of their last 4. Is this the textbook definition of a trap game? We're about to ask this man right here. He's my Super Bowl champ, Scott Shanley. I'm Victor Howell, and it's great to have you with us this morning on Saints Game Days. The Saints are back in action, as I mentioned. Final 2 home games of the season. You have the Jets today, Atlanta next week, and then the Saints will close out this campaign out in Tampa Bay. Scott, I know at this time of year, especially with the stretch run, the nice extended break coming off a Thursday night game is probably helpful health-wise, but then again, bittersweet, because you played a game Thursday night that could have changed really the scheme for the rest of the season, and you wound up leaving Atlanta with a loss.
Yeah, sometimes it's nice to have this break to get over things physically. There's a lot of ailments. Every single player has bumps and bruises. It's nice to get over those things. But mentally, now you've had an extended time to listen to your last defeat, as well as listen to the upcoming game where you're one of the biggest point spreads in Saints history. Right. So that's difficult. You have to get ready both physically and mentally for games like this.
Well, and when people ask, hey, I hear people talk all the time about a trap game. What is a trap game? Well, it could be this. The Jets are in town, and the Saints opened up, and with the point spread that's the largest in franchise history, started around 15, actually jumped up to 17 and a half. As of this morning, it's 16 and a half before kick. Still the highest spread ever in franchise history. So, Scott, when you say a trap game, should you just look at this game as a textbook example? You're facing a struggling team 1 week after and 1 week before monster games against your biggest rival?
Yeah, and I think the one thing Coach Payton will probably do with this Saints team is make them realize it's not about who you're playing, it's about us. It's about getting better every single week. It's about playing our best football. Come playoff time, as we're gearing up to hopefully get in the playoffs, let's play our best football. It doesn't matter who's in a different color jersey. It doesn't matter where we're playing, what time we're playing. We have to play our best football. And this Jets team, they've been sporadic this year. Now, Josh McCown was kind of that spark plug, missing him last week with that injury and getting a broken hand. It's going to be difficult, and I think that's why you see the point spread where it is this week with this team missing him.
You talk about being kind of up and down. Remember, it was a few weeks ago, they were up on Carolina late in the fourth quarter before Carolina had to pull out that victory, and the Jets went all Jets and failed in the fourth quarter, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's talk about one of the important cogs for the Saints, who should be back in action this afternoon at home, and that's Alvin Kamara. He's been cleared, should be good to go. His early concussion against the Falcons in Atlanta knocked him out of that game. How important, Scott, is he? Second in the NFL in yards from scrimmage with over 1,017. Only the third rookie in NFL history to surpass 600 yards receiving and 600 yards rushing. How was his impact missed last week? The Saints rushed for 50 yards. Ingram had 49 of those. I'd say 41 is pretty important.
Absolutely. We talked about Josh McCown being that spark plug for the Jets. This guy has been nothing short but the spark plug for the Saints this year. Probably going to be the NFC or the NFL Rookie of the Year if he continues on this pace. But I can go out on a limb and say I really believe the Saints team would have beat that Atlanta team if this guy had not left the game so early in the game. He causes matchup problems everywhere. I don't think there's any linebacker core in the NFL or safety core that can cover this guy in the backfield. And that's what Sean Payton does better than anybody in the NFL is creates mismatches and matchup problems for teams.
Not only out of the backfield, but look at the screen game as well.
Exactly.
He changed the schemes, and he actually got off to a good start. They were driving early, which is when he suffered that concussion and couldn't come back against the Falcons. There is one other injury note we should touch on here, and it looks like the Saints will be without one of their big wide receivers, Ted Ginn Jr., not expected to play. Reports coming out of Saints camp this morning. It's a rib injury. How does that affect the passing game today against the Jets?
Well, I think what you're going to see with the Jets now is you're going to be able to bring another safety down in the box, and you're going to say we haven't seen anybody else with the speed down the field that Ted Ginn provides. So we're going to take our chances. We're going to load the box a little bit. We're going to take care of 41. We're going to take care of 22 in the running game, and we're going to make you throw the ball deep because Ted Ginn, he's a little bit longer in the tooth now. He's played a lot of years in the NFL, but he's still one of the elite deep threats in the NFL. So I think you're going to see the Jets adjust their defensive game plan.
And look to see some of those other wide receivers step up in his absence today for the Saints. Let's look at the playoff scenario now with these 3 games left to go. Final game out of conference, and as we mentioned, you finished in the NFC South. The Saints holding on to 4, right behind the Rams, who are 9-4, and of course the Rams have that tiebreaker, having beaten the Saints. There are the Panthers and the Falcons. Now, as Scott mentioned a couple weeks ago as we've been looking at this, also keep your eye on the Seahawks. Well, the Seahawks have the Rams today. So that's a huge matchup. The Saints could get a win and get to 10-4. You'll see what happens with the Rams and the Seahawks. Atlanta, of course, comes to town next week. And by the way, the Vikings, who are just ahead of them at 10-3, they host Cincinnati. Good chance the Vikings go to 11-3 after today's actions of the playoff scenario. And, of course, we'll recap all that tonight as it changes after this week of action is in the books. It's time to take it downtown New Orleans off of Poydras. Let's jump inside the Mercedes-Benz Superdome and say good morning, as we always do, to our Saints insider, Mike Neighbors. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Victor, you know that Atlanta Thursday night game seems like a long time ago, and for the New Orleans Saints, they were probably itching to go the next day after playing a game they feel like they should have won late. You mentioned the point spread. You know, Sean Payton and Drew Brees have accomplished a lot in their tenure here in New Orleans, but this is uncharted territory. At one point, they were 15-point favorites over the Jets. Then it moved up to, as you mentioned, 16.5. And you talk about trap games. The Saints have had a few earlier this season. The Chicago Bears, the Bucs came in here struggling. But I don't think this is a trap game, especially coming off that Atlanta game. 3 games left. They're fighting for the playoffs. I don't think you can mention those words entering this contest. Speaking of the Atlanta game, though, that was a Thursday Night Football tilt. And when you talk about the Saints' history in Thursday Night Football, this is really how it stacks up. As you see, they've lost 2 games in a row on Thursday night, but they have a chance to win 3 in a row after the Thursday night, turnaround. That's always a tough turnaround for any football team. We talked to the Saints this week. As you see their history, if they win this game, they can now go 3-3 after the Thursday Night Football contest, and the Saints feel they are primed to bounce back.
There's no hangover from that, Man, we're on to the next opponent. We're on to the next opportunity, the next challenge, and then we'll take it one at a time. And I feel like guys have been steady, really steady.
Normally it's a 24-hour rule. I was allowed 36. I took 36. But yeah, honestly, the long weekend allowed me to clear the head and get back into this Jets film. So if anything, steady's not my word for it. I was overly irate. But when you talk about, we have the possibility to play the Jets and then have Atlanta come to us and then finish out with the Tampa. We have 2 division opponents that we have to get wins from. We've got 3 weeks left, and again, we're ready for it now.
Does this sound like a group in the Saints locker room that are focusing on a trap game, that are overlooking a Jets team that's pretty banged up and frankly not that good? Well, we're just getting revved up here at the Dome. Coming up, your inactive report, which will be a big one. You mentioned Ted Ginn. We'll see if he's on it. We also are going to talk about the Saints Pro Bowl history and how Marshawn Lattimore could change it when it comes to cornerbacks, and more likely it's coming too, guys. I know you're excited, so much more to come from the Dome. Back to you.
Mike, we'll see you in just a couple of moments. Time to take our first time out on Saints Game Day. When we come back, we'll focus on the Jets. We've been allotted about 1 minute 30 seconds to talk about Bryce Petty, and we're going to show you every one of his touchdown passes. Tells you there's not a lot in that resume, but we'll talk about him as he starts a quarterback for the Jets. And we'll talk about Robbie Anderson. Hey, if you voted for him for the All-Pro game, he wants you to. I'll explain that story coming up. So I'm coming back by saying, hey, if nothing else, give the Jets credit for being honest.
They've played good football. They're not winless, and then at the end of the day, they're one of the 32 teams that have NFL talent. No win's going to be an easy win. No loss is an easy loss. When you talk about the battles that incur, this is why the NFL is the NFL. So when you talk about this week, or if you want to talk about Atlanta coming in the week after that, I can't focus on Atlanta because I'm focused on the Jets. I'm focused on Bryce Petty, which I believe will be the quarterback.
It's really formidable. Every one of these guys can rush the passer. Every one of them can defend the run. They're a stout group. It doesn't take you long when you turn on the film to see, what they can do. So yeah, we've got a work cut out for us there.
Hey, if nothing else, you can give the Jets credit for being honest. 1 week ago, they were playing Denver, lost 23-0, and then this week, offensive coordinator John Morton admitted that being down 23-0 in the fourth quarter, he just wanted to run out the clock. He had lost his quarterback to a broken hand, as Scott had just mentioned, and he said instead of putting his players in a bad position to get hurt even worse, he ran nothing but running plays. Wanted to run out the clock. As he said, we just wanted to get out of there. Quote, they kicked our butts, and sometimes that happens in the NFL. Hey, thanks for being honest. Just get out here, and players wonder, why do we keep running the ball? He didn't want to pass it and put anybody in trouble. One of those players he was probably trying to protect, well, that's Bryce Petty. He's going to get the start at quarterback today because Josh McCown broke his hand. McCown will be on the bench acting like a quarterback coach and give advice for Petty. But it's just the kind of thing where defenses kind of lick their chops a little bit, Scott, when you talk about this. He had not taken a snap this season until the third quarter when he went down in that game. And what you're seeing here are his three career touchdown passes.
Yeah, even though Bryce Petty, he's in his third year. He hasn't played a whole lot of football. I think he started 5 or 6 games last year and got some action. Hasn't seen a whole lot of playing time this year. These are the types of games, this point in the season, when he hasn't played a lot, seen live game reps, you dial up the pressures. And the Saints, Dennis Allen has been dialing up the pressures more recently, so I think you're going to see a lot of pressure, a lot of man-to-man coverage, and see this Saints defense get after this Jets offense.
Told you going into the break that Robbie Anderson wanted you to vote for him for the Pro Bowl. I said all-pro game. You know what I meant, the Pro Bowl in the NFL. Why do we say that? Well, against Carolina, he caught 2 touchdown passes. After the second touchdown pass, he went to the bench, looked in the TV camera, and said, hey, everybody, vote me into the Pro Bowl. I want to go to the Pro Bowl. Guess what? The Jets lost the lead. They lost to Carolina, and he hasn't had a touchdown pass reception since. Karma, you tell me. Now, he does have 7 on the year, and I'm sure for Petty, he'll probably be one of his go-to guys.
Yeah, Robbie, you need to understand you got to win games and get to the Pro Bowl. That's the first.
Exactly.
That's the first criteria. But this kid's been outstanding. He's in his second year. Came out of Temple, not a high draft pick. He's got great size, 6'3", but he's in the top 10 in yards per reception, 16.3 yards per catch. So he knows how to make plays down the field, and Saints are going to have to be aware where number 11 is.
There are going to be some familiar names in Jets uniforms in terms of coming out of the backfield, because a couple of players who played their college ball here in the state of Louisiana are making the return trip to New Orleans. One who played in the Superdome for his Tulane Green Wave, and of course we're talking about Matt Forte, who had all his years in Chicago, now with the Jets. Elijah McGuire played for UL Lafayette. You can see the rushing attempts and the yards. Now McGuire really hasn't had a lot in terms of the total. He has 90 total rushing yards in the last 5 games. And one name you don't see on here, but probably will get more playing time, Scott, is Bilal Powell, because Forte's been limited. McGuire hasn't really been producing, and this week Petty was doing a lot of checkdowns to Powell, so we might see Powell more than either of these 2 guys on the screen.
Yeah, kind of a running back by committee. Powell's been there a while. He's played a lot of football there. When Chris Ivory was there, they kind of split time. But Matt Forte, if he gets in, he's been one of the running backs. I think he's got a lot of respect from guys. I had the privilege of playing against him a couple times to the pride of Tulane. Over 14,000 yards from scrimmage in his 10-year career. So he's done a heck of a lot of good things in the NFL. He's a great leader for that team, and I know if he can be on the field, that's good for the Jets offense.
Look, we've enjoyed covering him here since his college days and throughout his days in the NFL. So we'll see how much action he can get today for the Jets. Let's go to the other side of the ball. Let's talk defense for a moment. Talk about Demario Davis, the linebacker for the Jets, who leads the team in tackles. He's on pace for 170 tackles on this season. Look, Scott, there's a lot of not so good we can focus on for the Jets, but if you want to focus on one that's really good, it's Demario Davis.
Yeah, he's been a tackling machine. Every single year he's been in the starting lineup. He's always in that 3-digit tackle numbers when it comes to the time for the season to be over, but he's one of those guys who tough, downhill, plays fast. But the one thing about this Jets team, we talked about this game today, this Jets defense has the ability to give the Saints offense some fits. It's more that matchup with the Saints defense against the Jets offense. Jets offense is good. But this guy, you got to know where he is on the field, because he can make plays in the passing game and the running game.
And there are going to be some defensive players as well for the Jets that the Saints need to know of, and certainly fans around here, LSU fans, will know where they are, because it's that whole witness of LSU, DBU to the NFL, and the Jets' defensive backfield is full of them. Jamal Adams, Mo Claiborne, and Rashard Robinson. Now, Robinson, of course, was with the 49ers before he was traded to the Jets. But let's focus on Jamal Adams for a moment. With as much that the Jets have been struggling, they had some articles in New York over the last week that said that the team officials and people in New York were saying if the Jets had 53 players with the same kind of attitude as Jamal Adams, it could be a completely different team. That's very high praise for that young man.
Very high praise for a young player and a rookie, and they view him as a leader. And I think the one thing, when you look at Jamal Adams, the career he had at LSU, the passion he brings to the game, I think in April when the draft came, I don't think there's one team that wouldn't have liked to take this kid first in the first round of the NFL draft. He has playmaking ability, but more so than that, he brings that fire. He brings that edge that you need every single Sunday. He brings that passion that we just talked about, and that's why the Jets love this guy.
And where did he get even more respect than he already has in New York? When they played Carolina and Cam Newton went into the end zone and started to do Superman, guess who went and broke it up? It was Jamal Adams went over there to try to stop that, because that was at the Jets ballpark as well. Saints fans want to see this sign. The man is on the field. He's warming up. Should be good to go this afternoon. That's Alvin Kamara getting ready to go for the Saints, hosting the Jets at noon at the Superdome. We're going to take you back to the Dome and rejoin our Saints insider Mike Neighbors when we come back on Saints Game Day. Some of the Saints players last segment when they talked about being focused on one team and one team only, and that's the Jets. They have a new quarterback that's only played a quarter and a half this season. Scott was talking about the kind of pressure that defenses can put on him, and certainly one of the defensive players that the Saints are glad is back on the field, Marshawn Lattimore, and I know our Saints insider Mike Neighbors has more on him as we take it back to the sidelines inside of the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. Hey, Mike?
Hey, Victor, Marshawn Lattimore is healthy, and that's good news for the New Orleans Saints. The inactive list just posted. Not too many surprises. Of course, linebacker A.J. Klein, Trey Hendrickson, defensive lineman, both hurt against the Falcons, will miss this game. And as you reported earlier in the show, Ted Ginn Jr. will miss this game with a rib injury. But the good news, Andres Pete, he's going to play. He was moving around pretty good in this pregame. Kenny Vaccaro, he's back at it, and so is Alvin Kamara. And when you talk about Alvin Kamara and Marshawn Lattimore, you would think they have a great shot of sweeping Rookie of the Year honors for the New Orleans Saints. And you may wonder, has a team ever done that in NFL history? Well, actually, it's happened once, and it happened 50 years ago. The first year they gave out the award, the Detroit Lions swept it as running back Mel Farr and future Hall of Famer Lem Barney, the cornerback. They both won and went on to have pretty good careers. You hope Marshawn Lattimore may be a Hall of Famer one day, but let's do baby steps. Maybe he'll be a Pro Bowler. And when you think about Pro Bowl voting that came out this week, you know, the fans had their say, and no New Orleans Saints were on there, but the voting will continue with the coaches and the players. And if Marshawn Lattimore can make it, it's been a long, long time since the New Orleans Saints have had a cornerback in the Pro Bowl. You have to go back 22 years. Yeah, Eric Allen back in 1995. Now, some may say, you know, Roman Harper and Darren Sharper made it, but those were safeties. 6 safeties for the New Orleans Saints have made it, but it's been a long time for a corner. There you see the rest of the list. Tyrone Hughes back in 93, and way back in 1967, Dave Wetzel. But Marshawn Lattimore, he has a good shot. He has a lot of respect around the league, especially the way he handled Julio Jones last week. And this week he talked about being back against Atlanta and providing juice for this defense the last 3 games of this season.
I try to bring as much juice as I can, you know, back to the team, you know. Just little things, you know, just like after plays, we make big play interceptions, you know, we go and take pictures, you know, all that type of stuff. So, I mean, that brings us closer together, you know, I feel like. So that makes us, you know, play with swag and, you know, bring us all together. I mean, I got to pick. We still lost, though, at the end of the day. So, I mean, that really don't mean too much to me, you know, if we lose. But, you know, just going up against him, he's got to be competitive. You know, he's a big, strong, fast guy. So, you know, I be seeing, like, on tape, a lot of people be scared of, you know, him and receivers like him. So I just try to go out there with confidence and do what I have to do. Man, in order to be the best, you got to play the best, you know, and do good against the best.
It's amazing, guys. Marshawn Lattimore, the first guy in 22 years for the Saints to be a cornerback and make the Pro Bowl. And what's further amazing than that is the Saints have had as many punters make the Pro Bowl as corners, and that would be 3. More likely, we'll see if that happens or changes in the future. Speaking of more likely, your favorite segment is coming up now. All right, guys, we're going to kind of change things up. What's great about this segment of Saints Tonight is our anchors in studio have not seen these questions. And our first one is, there's a correct answer this time. It's kind of a trivia question, a segue from our Pro Bowl discussion. Looking back, our first more likely, which position in Saints history has the most Pro Bowlers? Would it be linebackers, offensive linemen, or running backs? What do you think?
I think it's a trick question.
I think it's a trick question. I think it's a trick question. But that being said, I'm going to go with linebackers. I'm going to go with the dome patrol. It's fresh in everybody's memory, but I feel like Mike's setting us up here.
I was saying, I'm trying to think of where the other ones would be because I'm not sure. I can't think of running back, so I would think maybe he's going to try to lean offensive line because it seems like an easy setup. I'm with you. Dome patrol, when they all win at one time, kind of puts them in the lead. So, all right, Mike, we're both going to bite on the bait here. We'll both say linebackers, knowing you're probably going to trick us. So go ahead.
You know, but despite what you think, I do quality research for this show. Linebackers are second. Offensive linemen, guys, lead the way. You have 13 Saints offensive linemen in their history have made the Pro Bowl. Linebackers are actually third. Running backs are 9. Linebackers are 7. Wow. Defensive line, tie them for third with 7. You know what? If somebody would have asked me that blindly, I would have said linebackers as well. But I try to trick you once in a while. All right, your second more likely. How many games will the Saints win down the stretch? 3 to go. Will they win out? Will they win 2 or 3? Or will they only win 1? More likely, what do you think?
I'm going to go with the sweep. Yep. I think today's game, you win today's game. I think Tampa Bay is going to have their bags packed at the end. That game next week is critical for the division, but I think the Saints at home, there's a little bit of payback. They're going to beat Atlanta.
I mean, you basically said it exactly the same way I would, Mike. You win today, they refocus. The Dome's going to be electric next week with Atlanta coming in. You get that payback, and by the time you get to Tampa, you know what the weather's like in January in Tampa. They're getting ready for bowl season and golf season, and the Buccaneers will be right there getting ready to go play golf. I couldn't have said it any better than Scott did. I'm going with the sweep as well.
You know, you never want to lose a football game, but I predict down the road this team will make the playoffs, and they'll look back. That Thursday night loss against Atlanta kind of jump-started them down the stretch. Yeah, they buried the Jets today. I think they're really fired up to give Saints fans an early Christmas present against the Falcons. And let's face it, the Bucs are a mess. Yeah. So they went out, no doubt about it in my mind. All right, your third more likely. We like to have fun with this. Let's look back at that Atlanta game. Oh, what a mess that was in so many ways. More likely, what was the worst part of the Atlanta loss? The officiating, the lame crowd in the brand new stadium for the Falcons, or the injuries?
Well, I'm going to take attendance out of there because Atlanta fans have always kind of been notorious for not showing up unless they start winning games and meaningful games. I'm going to go with the officiating. I think the officiating in that game, the field goal before halftime, that call, I've rarely seen that call where they don't call the offensive line being up far enough. Usually it's a warning. You heard Sean Payton talk about that. That took 3 points off the board. I think that could have been the difference in the game. So I'm going with officiating.
Well, we've heard enough about officiating. Sean Payton got fined $10,000 for talking to the officials and jumping on the field. I'm going to go with injuries because, as we talked about at the top of the program, Alvin Kamara's got a big role in that opening drive down the field. Who goes down with that concussion? Tried to come back for, I think, one play? Yeah. Then they realized he couldn't come back anymore. And as you mentioned, he kind of changed the scheme of what the Saints could do offensively. Officiating was pitiful. Attendance was embarrassing. But I'm going to go, Mike, I'm going to go with the injuries.
You know, I agree with Scott. I have never, in 12 years of being with the New Orleans Saints and covering this football team, used officiating as an excuse. But you're right. The field goal call, the call against Shelton Rankins, the personal foul, I don't know where that came from. It really played a part in that game more than usual, so I'll say officiating. Well, coming up, we'll have Saints tonight after the game on CST at 101 with Drew Brees and others from the locker room. But for now, that's a story from the Dome. Back to you guys.
As always, a great job, Mike. Thanks so much. We will see you tonight, and when we come back, we'll talk about a former Saint who is saying goodbye to the game, and he wants to do so as a Saint. And Scott will give you his key for the Saints against the Jets when we come back. Saints fans might remember every time this man lined up on the field for a kick return, Reggie, Reggie, Reggie. This is one of those great plays against Chicago. Remember this, the cut back, and he would take it the distance. Reggie Bush announcing this week he is going to retire from the NFL, and he's coming back to do so. As he said, I'm coming home to retire as a Saint. Scott, there were some big-time highlights throughout the NFL, but there were times when this man had the ball. Highlights don't even do it justice, the kind of explosiveness he had on the field.
I've never seen a player like this in person. The things he did on a daily basis, whether it be in practice or the weight room, people were not supposed to be built to do the things that Reggie Bush did. You see all him flying into the end zone, jumping from the 6-yard line and leaping in the end zone. He was spectacular. Injuries started to mount up a little bit for Reggie, but in his prime, he was as electrifying as a player as I've ever seen.
There you see one of those kick returns right there. So congratulations to Reggie Bush, who decided to call it a career and to do so as a New Orleans Saint. Congratulations to number 25. The Saints are about an hour away from kicking off against the Jets. Game one of the final three and game one of 2 straight at home with the Falcons next week. But first things first, as the player said, they're focused on the Jets. So for them to get that win, if they're going to sweep, it starts today. What do they need to do?
The key to today has nothing to do with stats. The Saints are better in almost every category. It has everything to do with mental. Do not let the last game, the last loss at Atlanta, carry over to today's game and have you off to a sluggish start. Give the Jets hope early in this game. Get off to a fast start and mentally overcome that last loss.
We'll see if the Saints can do it, and we'll see you back here to recap it all tonight on Saints Tonight. Report behind enemy lines, and Mike has all the reaction from the Saints. For Scott Shanley, Mike Neighbors, I'm Victor Howell. Enjoy your Saints game day.